guys? It is Ash and Saf back at you in Dragonheir Silent Gods. We are making some progress, Saf, and I figured before we get too far ahead of ourselves, we just did our first summoning video. In case you guys missed it, it was a banger, dude. Like,
easy.
It was.
You brought so much luck. It wasn't my luck. Anyone who's ever seen any of my videos up until recently, I can't really say it anymore. I used to have terrible summoning luck. I always used to hit Mercy. I'd never get the champions I want. I'm still Kai Marlas in Raid.
Oh man!
Raid, but you know what I mean?
Oh,
so you brought the luck. It was nothing to do with me. I wasn't cursing. It was all about you.
That was a beautiful, beautiful video. I don't want to ruin it for you guys in case you haven't seen it yet. But basically, I asked Saf at the top of the video, like, who would be the best legendary that we could pull in the game, and I think that legendary was probably the second. The one that you called, one of the few that you called out was probably the second or the third that we got in that video. So it went really well. Thanks to Dragonheir for making this channel possible, sponsoring this content. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, because I'm learning a ton through you, and on our shared account, we started an alliance as well a few videos ago, and we're starting to really form our first team and really getting into building the teams and these heroes. But I figured we would take a step back today and just talk like basic beginner stuff about the stats of each hero in the game, what to prioritize, you know, and especially coming from Raid. I don't want to make it so Raid centric, but like some of these, like enlightenment, like I don't know what that means. Like coming from Raid, some of these, I'm sure they're just different verbiage sometimes for things that we might be familiar with. But you know, without further ado, let's just jump into it. Anything. I mean, HP, defense, attack, Saf. I'm assuming there's nothing really to discuss there.
No, I think the only thing to make note of is, you know, you can see the multipliers in this game. So whenever you look at abilities, you can actually see what damage they're going to scale off. And in some cases, you will find that you get this logical thing of defense scales with defense. HP can be, they use HP a little bit, but not much. Most of your multipliers will be attack, but sometimes you will get some bonus damage. And enlightenment is a very unique stat. It does very different things to do with derivative damage. So there's a lot to learn. And of course, because it is an active battle system, it's not a turn-based battle. You need to also think of like building your hero as more of a DPS meter rather than a how hard can I make it hit. It's much more about how much damage can I do. So it's not always the quest to get to 100% crit rate. Sometimes you would accept a lower crit rate just because of the way the itemization works.
Okay. Yeah, Watcher Rum's like that too a little bit. Yeah, where it's like some of the tried and true rules, so to speak, don't necessarily apply when you cross over games. So that's why I wanted to make this video as well. There's no dumb question when we have Ash on the channel, ladies and gentlemen. But when we look at 500% attack, is it literally not their base attack, but their attack after their gear and everything? It's exactly 500% of that number. That's exactly what they're going to be getting?
Yeah, it's essentially that. So when they basic attack, when they're doing their auto attacks, it's 100% of the attack value, and then the targets have some sort of defense equation. I don't truly know. I've been trying to figure it out. It's been a bit of a quest of mine to figure out exactly how enemies reduce damage. But when I attack, basic attacks, because every hero will basic attack, they're using 100% of their attack value. When you then see an ability that says, I'm going to do 22% of the attack, it is literally attack value in the state of the battle. So if you have like an attack buff, then it will be the attack buff value times 0.22 for 22%, for example.
Okay, so buffs obviously have a quite significant impact on the overall damage. When you see the 22 deals an additional 22% attack, it's literally 22% of their attack, so it's a very weak-ish hit in a vacuum. In a vacuum.
Hivatar is one of the most scariest heroes you can fight.
Yeah.
What she will do is she'll start charging up at the start of battle, and therefore it's doing like 22% attack every, I think, second. And then after 15 seconds, she
executed
this massive attack, 600% attack.
That's insane. Okay.
It's very, very scary.
I picked a good one. All right, a little Frozen shout out here. Okay, what do we have here? So HP, defense, attack. I assume in this game there's some defense-based damage dealers or HP-based damage dealers as well. So you have to make sure that you're looking at the appropriate stat when deciding what to scale up for your hero, right? Yeah,
it's pretty logical. Like someone like Garrus is going to do damage based on defense. He's a defense-based champion. Like it's not going to force you to build poorly. But it will require you to build sensibly, right? To know what you are scaling from. That is very important. Like if you look at Garrus here, you'll see that his damage on the A2, it scales off defense. Great. Well, he's defense based. His healing is defense, so we don't really need to worry about attack.
So
it does
I
make
was going to say, so
useless though.
But you put the words in my mouth. So like exactly. So on a champion like or a hero like Garrus, attack is absolutely irrelevant. We don't care about it at all.
Not irrelevant because obviously his basic attacks will still do damage based off attack. So his abilities will scale off defense, but his basic attacks, his auto attacks, those will all be based off attack.
Okay.
Because it's an active battle system, essentially. It's not turn-based. What they're doing on a basic attack matters as well.
So everybody is attack-based on their basics?
As far as my testing has been,
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what it's very difficult with him because you can see he's got like very close defense and attack base value. So
yes, indeed. Okay, so enlightenment. Talk about enlightenment.
It's a useless stat for some champions. Enlightenment will scale the damage that you deal when you deal derivative damage, or if a champion particularly heals or scales off of that. So you can see like Catherine's a great pick here. She heals, but she heals off the target's maximum HP. But if you want to enhance that healing, then you invest enlightenment. That is when that is used. It's either as an enhancement for sort of like where it says the word derivative damage, that will scale off enlightenment. So you can go to someone like a poisoner, is very common. They do a lot of derivative damage. It's a topic that we were talking about because we've pulled a lot of poisons.
Yeah,
someone like Victana, I think it is.
Yeah,
she does derivative damage here. So if you go to her ultimate, it's going to do a bonus execution based on the number of poisons with the derivative damage. Well, if you want to scale that derivative damage, enlightenment. That is what you will add to her build. Now, she still needs attack. So it's kind of like now you play this game of how much attack versus how much enlightenment. Is it better for more enlightenment, less? It's the fun part.
Yeah, and it says right here as well, like as a reminder to people out there, you don't have to memorize all this stuff. Damage generated by a specific skill gains an enlightenment bonus, cannot trigger crit as well.
Yeah, it's normally like poisons are considered like any sort of like burn, like a poison effect. Or any sort of negative damage status effects that you place on enemies, like debuffs, they will all scale off enlightenment in terms of damage most of the time as well.
Should new players, because I imagine mostly beginners are watching this video, if not, then thanks for watching anyway, I appreciate you guys. Should new players even focus on enlightenment, or should you just stick to the main stats in the very beginning of the game, like your first month or whatever?
Before level 70 on a hero, it's actually quite difficult to get a lot of enlightenment.
Okay.
You can get enlightenment as a main stat on a chest, but until you get to like legendary, the number doesn't grow enough. You can get enlightenment on runes, but they unlock at like rank 4 and rank 5. So early on, you're going to be just like using their attack multiplier, but when you start building out heroes completely,
then you'll be focused on min-maxing that. Okay. Crit rate, crit damage, man. How much does 2 questions? Well, you already covered the first one. Crit rate on a damage dealer, how it like a raw damage dealer, right? How much is crit rate important to get as close to 100% as possible? A, and B, how important is scaling crit damage versus their base damage stats, so attack in this case?
So it's actually really hard to get to 100% crit rate in this game. You have to be like the gloves will only go 40%.
Okay.
So you get a 50% with gloves, and then like the substat rolls can be as low as 3%. So you will actually find that a lot of the time when you're playing the game, you're like, why can't I get to 100% crit rate? It's not easy. And heroes that have like bonus crit rate in their abilities, like Tonalnan, I think is one of them, and I think some of the season 2 heroes, they got like a little bit of bonus crit rate. They get a little bit more value because you don't need to index so hard. Essentially, if you're going crit rate, you pretty much won't have much more than like 150 to 200% crit damage, whereas you can get 80% crit damage gloves. So
so you kind of have a choice to make a bit. Yeah,
exactly.
So what would you recommend for new players focus on when building out damage dealers? And second question is, this game strikes me that even supports are damage dealers in so many ways. So, what champions shouldn't you build with damage in mind, crit rate, crit damage, Yeah,
typically tanks, unless they're a very special tank, you probably won't build too much crit rate, crit damage, because you'll want to invest in things like accuracy, resistance, HP, defense, and you only have so much in your budget that you can do. You might even want things like skill haste, which we haven't talked about yet, but yeah. Definitely your main damage dealers, you'll want to try and build crit rate on them. It's not like you ignore it, but you often will consider like maybe drop like the attempt at trying to get to 100% crit rate for the sake of 40% more crit damage, or maybe I get a 400 more attack. And balancing the attack, crit rate, crit damage is actually a bit of an art, and it's something that myself and a couple of other creators, like I've been meaning to try and build some sort of DPS calculator so we can try and figure this out using all of the multipliers, because you've got to take into account their ability multipliers as well as their base attacks. Like someone like Dauntless, who are pretty much focused around their auto attacking, their basic attackings, well, that's going to be very much more beneficial for having a really good base attack as well as crit rate and crit damage, because it's less about their abilities and more about their actual auto attacking.
Their auto attack, yeah. So on a hero in this game that has an ultimate, let's just say deals 700% attack damage, right? They're also able to crit off that, or is that just raw attack damage? Okay, so let's just keep going on, and then we'll kind of do a sample build, I guess, on a without actually putting the gear because we don't have it on them, but we'll talk about an ideal early game build. So accuracy. Is it just the same as every other game, basically, like Raid, where you need to, if you want to do something to the opponent that involves an accuracy to resistance check, any debuffs, whatever, it requires accuracy?
Exactly, yeah, pretty much. The only thing that actually doesn't apply to is control effects, as far as I'm aware.
Oh, like freeze or whatever?
I'm not sure. Control effects kind of exist in this, like, they're not debuffs, but they are debuff sphere. So when you have like a debuff removal, you don't remove the control. I think you still need accuracy to land control effects, if I'm remembering correctly now. But I know that debuffs, the control effects are very unique in the way that they operate. But it's essentially the same thing as every other game. If the enemy has resistance, you need accuracy to beat it. I don't think there's a 3%, but there's not a hard and fast answer to what is a guaranteed effect, if that makes sense. It might still have some sort of like chance to fail. What's really cool about Dragonheir is they actually tell you this in advance. If you go to any boss,
it tells you
it tells you what
the
to
resistance is.
Yeah, so like if you go into the goblin pit there, it should actually tell you straight away. Like you can click on the view information down the bottom left, and it will tell you, recommended accuracy here is 30.
Oh man, what a really nice little quality of life thing, right?
Yeah, it's really basic. And if, for example, the boss does effects back to you, the goblins don't, they just attack you. It'll tell you, hey, we recommend you should have this much resistance if you want to resist the effects that the boss is doing. And as you go up to difficulties, you'll see it will increase and it will scale. And as you progress the game, you'll need more accuracy. And then when you get to like the more end game activities for the season, you need something like it kind of caps out around about 330 accuracy that you need in the very, very highest content.
Okay. What was next? So resistance, are we not prioritizing resistance a lot in the early game? It just feels like it's kind of overwhelming all the stats that we need. So I'm assuming resistance is not going to be a top priority.
Yeah, and to be honest, accuracy for the early game is very low priority as well, because the accuracy and the resistance really come from the rune slots in your hero. And you don't get those until you get to a certain journey level and you get them to rank 4 and rank 5 and you unlock those special dungeons. So for example, the negative rune, you can get an accuracy primary stat. The only other place you can get an accuracy primary stat is the chest. So it's very difficult, or your artifact, of course. Your artifact can do it, but they're all very unique and very specific. Sometimes you might not want to have like an accessory artifact to go on your champion, your hero, so you pretty much are locked into requiring a negative rune to get to those higher numbers. So you won't need to really go into them until you get to rank 4, rank 5 heroes, and at that point, then you start paying more attention to things that fall below the crit damage number. Okay,
attack interval and skill haste, are they tied together to skill haste or no?
Well, this is they kind of do similar things, but in different ways. So attack interval is the gap between every basic attack. So like I was saying with Dauntless, if your hero archetype is based on basic attacking, then it begs the question that obviously attack interval for a Dauntless hero is going to be very good, because the quicker I can do my basic attacks, the more damage I will do. And that is the built around that. But then other heroes, like here, for example, Iola is very much about the spells that she casts, the abilities that she uses. And skill haste is like cooldown reduction. It will basically reduce the recharge time of your abilities. You can kind of see an example if you go to the ultimate ability. It's a very little cool life hack. If you hit the little switcher icon there, it will actually show you right now the recharge speed. So skill haste improves the recharge speed, which reduces the cooldown of your ultimate ability. And you can see how much it's generating, because it's not it's one of those stats that you get 50 and it converts it into a percentage. If you click on skill haste, it will give you a little window, and then it tells you the current percentage when you scroll down to skill haste. There you go. It'll tell you a little bit higher. The current cooldown reduction is 0%. And it's not linear. It's like a diminishing return. So eventually skill haste becomes diminishing to some extent. It's not like every 1 equals 1%. That's not how it works.
All right. Well, let's talk about how to build your first heroes then, Sav. We talked about all the stats. I have a good understanding of all of them now. Thank you very much. Now, let's just use Iola or Lola. Let's use her as an example, right? So she's an attack-based damage dealer, right? Lightning. Obviously, she'll benefit from quite a few of these, right? I'm not sure if she has debuffs, attack penalty as well. So we're just starting out. We're on month 1 or whatever. How are we building her? It's it's tough to get everything, especially given the gear that we have access to your points earlier. So my intuition would be, let's stack up attack as much as we can on her. And after that, basically try to focus on crit rate, crit damage, and skill haste. I guess accuracy too. So, what should we prioritize and where should we get those, stats?
So before level 70, flat stats are actually better than percentages. So you, for example, on a glove, gloves and chests can give you percentage primary stats or flat stats. So attack flat or attack percentage, defense flat, defense percentage. So in the pre-70, because if you can see here, like our Larry has only got 682 base attack. A lot of his base attack is going to come when he gets to like level 90 plus. So at this point, it would be far better for us just to add a flat 120 attack rather than trying to get a percentage of that. Because if I have a pair of gloves that have got 120 attack, and then I have a pair of gloves that does 12% attack, well, that's not going to match anywhere near the value, right? It's not going to. Now, there's a little bit of difference. These new items that we've got here, the effect of the set is way worth it. Like the scroll and the sort of woven gloves, like we probably take those just because the effects that it gives is like a little mini set in there, especially for goblins lair. They're special. But generally early game, pre-70 up to this point, you're pretty much focusing on flat stats on the chest and the gloves. And like you said, you were absolutely spot on. Attack flat stat and crit rate flat stat are probably where you start with. You don't really focus much on anything else. But if you've got like an Axie chest, then you can. But most of the time, heroes that require doing debuffs will give you a little bit of base Axie. Like, Iola's got 32 base. It's going to cover us for a lot of the early game.
How about defenders in the early game? Is it as simple, Saf, as basically, okay, we're never going to be able to get to the stats that we want to. Let's just build up as much HP as possible. And I guess as a natural follow-up, talk about HP versus defense in this game. What matters more generally speaking? I feel like, in some games it's more HP, in other games more defense. So how do you kind of juggle
it depends.
The two? Yeah,
it depends on the hero. Like obviously Darius, if he heals off defense, then you're like, okay, well, his passive is based on a defense percentage. He heals on a defense percentage. So the more defense I can put on him, the more valuable he's going to be. If you don't have that, then you can like be a bit more flexible. There isn't really like a hard and fast rule of when to stop adding a defense, but at the same time, you don't want to have like a million defense and 1 HP. So it's
achieve a balance.
The fact it could be obvious. You could be,
achieve it.
Sensible.
Try to go for a balance on your tanks, but err to the stat, obviously, that they're based on.
It's like you know, like how you would play some things and you're just like, I think that's about right. That's probably the best way to approach HP and defense. When you look at it and you go, like now, for example, we would go, we're a bit low on defense here. So I'd be like, okay, let's just throw a bit of defense in where we can. He's only obviously level 14, so
I mean, this is we're early. We're 2 weeks in, by the way, for those of you watching who are not aware. So I guess final question is, most of the gear that you get in the beginning of the game really seems to stink. Is it? But they're very generous with the gold though. So should we just take everything to the highest level that we can just to have the stats that? Okay. That's what
when it comes to early game. You use basically the scraps that are given to you, and you can kind of freely use your gold. It's only when you start getting like legendary gear where gold will dry up very quickly because the upgrading cost from sort of 12 to 20 is very big. The upgrading cost up to 12 is very cheap, which is really cool. In essence, it allows experimentation. It's very cheap to try something. It's very expensive to perfect something, which is the way it should be.
I like that. No, it's a good kind of final note here, I guess. Unless you have, did we forget anything? Is there anything like an obvious no-brainer in terms of building a hero in the early game that we haven't gone over? I feel like we've been fairly thorough. We talked about all the stats. Cool.
I think so. Yeah, obviously there's a whole topic and question about itemization, what things to get. We'll probably cover that a bit when we talk about artifacts, because artifacts really kind of shape the way that you direct a hero and what they can do, and what, sometimes you'll even have an artifact that requires you to have accuracy on a hero that doesn't put any debuffs because of the way that they attack. So there's those kind of conversations we will probably have
as we go.
But I think that covers the basics, and it's very important because I even when I started playing, I was like, what the hell does enlightenment do?
Yeah. No, for
Now you
sure.
know.
And hopefully this helped you guys out as well. Saf, thanks again for your knowledge and just breaking everything down from an early game perspective. I'm sure it will help a lot of new beginners out there, myself included. So thanks again, man.
No worries.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for the video. We'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching till the end. Thank you, Dragonheir, Silent Gods, for sponsoring this video and this channel. Much love. And as always, take care, guys.